All right, welcome back to another episode of Phoenix Edge. This is an RPG and gaming podcast. My name's Hat.
And I'm Eric.
And today we are finally going to discuss Xenoblade Chronicles. Now, I'd never played this game before. Eric has been telling me many times that this was a great RPG. I've heard this from a lot of people. This is a great game. It's definitely not one you want to miss out on. And so I was excited to play it. But we actually announced early March that we're going to play it, and it's taken me 3 months to get through this game. I'm near 100 hours in my game clock. That's partly my own fault, but I finally completed it. So I feel accomplished that I finished this game. Eric, do you remember how long it took you to beat it your first time, or?
Oh,
roughly?
I think it was like 60 to 70 hours on my clock, but I
Really?
did some side stuff around it. But I think if I had to just think about the main campaign, it was probably about over 50 hours.
Yeah, it's a longer game for sure. But we'll jump into probably, because I think I kind of sorted out why it takes certain people longer than others, and I think I kind of figured that out. So, but we'll jump into that. But basically, what we're going to do today is we're going to do I'm going to cover a little bit of history or development that I researched from the for this game, and then also we're going to do a non-spoiler discussion. Just giving our general thoughts of the game and kind of very vague criticisms or positives, because we don't want to spoil the game, but we also want people that have never played this game but follow our podcast to have something to listen to this week. And then we will I'll put the time on in the description and on the video showing when we actually jump into the spoiler discussion. And so that's all we're going to do this week. Next week we will be back to our typical RPG news and gaming news, but this week we are just talking about Xenoblade Chronicles. So if you enjoy this game, I hope you also enjoy this episode. So let me jump into the history here a little bit. I was actually kind of surprised when I was researching this, because there's a fair amount of things that led up to this game. So I'm going to run through this real quick. Essentially, Xenoblade Chronicles was conceived in June 2006. It was by the Xenogears and Xenosaga creator Tetsuya Takahashi, I believe his name is pronounced. He was also serving as the president of Monolith Soft, a gaming company comprised mostly of disgruntled Square employees that were seeking more creative freedom, which they felt they were not getting at Square. However, at the time, Monolith Soft's main investor was Namco, and they were very unhappy about Xenosaga's sales performance. Now, today, that series is known as a classic, but then they were they felt like it was underperforming, so they were starting to become very restrictive on the type of content Monolith Soft could produce. And this led Takahashi to approach Nintendo about purchasing the majority rights from Namco, and Nintendo ended up doing that in 2006, announced it in 2007, and shortly after, Nintendo greenlighted production for Xenoblade. At the time, it was going to be called Monado, the beginning of the world, but that was later changed shortly before the game came out. There's a lot of speculation as why that has occurred, but I couldn't really find anything concrete. But
you couldn't hold back just calling the game Xeno something.
Yeah. Well, some people misquoted the president of Nintendo at the time, and that he decided to name it that, which I guess later came out was not true. And a lot of people I think that from past interviews, the main reason he did it was because he saw Sakaguchi name his game at the time The Last Story, which is kind of reminiscent of Final Fantasy. So perhaps he thought, well, hey, I got my own brand. This will help the game sell. Why don't I just call it Xenoblade? But there's some other people that pointed out, the translation of Xeno and getting really deep with it. I don't know. It's called Xenoblade Chronicles. That's all I know. But during production, Takahashi stated he was very focused on trying to bridge the gap between gameplay and narrative. So he would utilize, one of the big things is he'd utilize story ideas, which would also double as gameplay mechanics. So, for example, a lot of the magical abilities or special abilities used in combat would also be main points in the story. Being able to see attacks coming, that type of thing. They'd be equally brought up in the story and also the game. And then he also felt this was something that was lacking in his previous projects, so this was a main goal for him, is to make that more intertwined. He also wanted to push the boundaries of the Wii console and create as large of a world as possible, because he felt JRPGs were starting to go out of style at this time, and he wanted to show the West that JRPGs could still be just as good or as large as Western RPGs. One thing I thought was interesting was for the scenario, he placed, I'm going to butcher this name, but Yuichiro Takeda, I think it is. I don't know how to say it. But he's in charge of script writing duties. And this individual at the time had a primary background in writing anime episodes. So this was done on purpose because Takahashi wanted the game to be more accessible than some of his past games. That's not to say he wanted to bring down the complexity of a lot of the metaphors, and like there's all sorts of stuff you could go on with this game that I couldn't really get into, but he just wanted like the pacing to be something that's more accessible to the general audience. So that's why he chose this individual who is very knowledgeable with writing anime episodes. So I thought that was interesting. Initially, the game was contracted to come out in 2009, and Takahashi was fully expecting to cut content in order to meet the deadline. However, Nintendo said, no, don't cut any content. You can do whatever you want. Just get the game out within the Wii's time frame. He ended up being able to do everything he wanted with the game, which I think is very, very rare and frankly kind of awesome. That's really cool because you think about it. I know Xenogears had to get cut short, or they had to rush the ending because they didn't have enough time. I think same thing with Xenosaga. You know, I'm
just imagining the entire second half of Xenoblade being just all cutscenes and occasional battles.
Like Xenogears, yeah. So that was really cool of Nintendo to do that, and it sounds like Monolith Soft finally got what they wanted, and having that creative freedom. But as a result, the game was released in June 2010 in Japan. It received a Famitsu score of 36 out of 40 and sold 83,000 copies within the first week. The game came out the next year in Europe, but Nintendo had no plans of releasing the game in North America. This upset a lot of Americans, especially Americans, I should say, although we're not the only people here on North America.
I was personally part of this
Operation Rainfall
coming up.
Yeah. So, well, looks like Operation Rainfall, which do you want to give some background with that?
Essentially, our main man, our Lord and Savior, Reggie Fils-Aimé, president of Nintendo, still current president of Nintendo today, decided that 3 games that they believed were not worthwhile to localize, and those 3 games were Xenoblade, Last Story, and Pandora's Tower. Now, in response to that, people created a group called Operation Rainfall in purpose of getting petitions and enough signatures and media out to show Nintendo that this is a game that definitely needs to be localized, especially since Europe has already taken the liberty of localizing it themselves. All 3 games were localized by Europe, and you can tell if you play all 3 of these games, like with the British like voice actors, in it, and I guess one day it just clicked with Nintendo, and it said, people are demanding it. It's already been localized in Europe. All we have to do is just do our checks and balances and getting it over here to America. And when Xenoblade itself came over here, very successful. It was only sold at GameStop, I believe.
Yeah, that's what I was reading. It was only sold at, it was a GameStop exclusive game, but even then it still did really well.
Yeah, and it sold very well. And to the point that, like, GameStop actually was taking the new sticker off them and throwing the used one on it because they could sell it for more than $50. They were selling it for like $80 to $90.
Oh wow!
Used for the game. Yeah, it was kind of a really crappy thing that they did. But but overall, it was successful. The last story and Pandora's Tower were moderately successful themselves. And after that, Xenoblade is a household name to Nintendo now. They, whenever anything Xenoblade comes, it definitely makes its way here to America now. I mean, they definitely learned their lesson with that in a good way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it seemed odd that they wouldn't bring it to North America anyways. It's kind of perplexing because they already did, like you said, localized it in Europe. So, but I mean, I did see one successful statistic that I thought was very cool about Operation Rainfall. One of the things they did was they got fans to pre-order an old placeholder for Xenoblade Chronicles on Amazon, because at one point in time, Nintendo was playing with the idea of releasing it over here. So I guess, you know, they got all these fans to pre-order it on Amazon because it hadn't been taken down yet. And it said it actually became the #1 pre-ordered item on Amazon, surpassing even The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, surpassed like the PS3 bundle at the time, which I'm sure that also got Nintendo's attention. So that was pretty impressive.
Well, I'll tell you all how badly I wanted to play Xenoblade. I've never done this to any of my consoles over here before, but I actually decided to software mod my Wii so it could just run European or PAL copies of games. Like, I didn't put like any ROMs or anything on it. I just unlocked the ability to play European games on it. And I ordered Xenoblade from overseas, and I mean, I tell you, that's how badly I want to play. I have 2 copies of Xenoblade over here. Well, technically 3. The North American copy, the European copy of the Wii version, and the 3DS version.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was the same for that and Last Story. I really wanted to play both of them. Yeah,
this is so... I was seeing that a lot when I was looking online. People were trying to find ways to play it. So I'm glad Nintendo finally got, figured it out. Like, hey, like people actually enjoy these games. Especially even like The Last Story, which is, Final Fantasy S, right? So, I mean, it's just, Final Fantasy associated because Sakaguchi's on it. Like they could really capitalize on that. That's what I meant. But I don't know. But anyways, it came out and it was very, very successful. Like you said, there's a 3DS port in 2015. Some people like that port, some people don't. But
to its credit and to its fault at the same time, the 3DS version is straight bare bones, a straight ported copy of the Wii version.
Oh, really? They didn't do anything to it?
Nothing special. Mm-mm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, if you have not played this game, there is that option for you. I personally, I ended up emulating the game because I just wanted to play it in HD. So that's the way I played it on my computer.
Did you put the HD user interface mod on there?
I actually did not. So I guess I shouldn't say that. I just wanted to play at a higher resolution and be able to use, save states and stuff like that. But
oh yeah, it still looks great regardless. But someone made this really incredible UI mod that just makes the game just look so spectacularly HD.
Yeah, I was kind of toying with that, but then I had to do some like special stuff, and I was just like, I don't know if this is gonna mess with anything, so I just kind of kept it. But yeah,
it's not required. It was just a nice little touch.
For sure. But I don't know. If I play it again, I might try that out. But anyways, so we have that's basically the history of the game. Like you said, it was very, very successful. It spawned some sequels, most notably recently Xenoblade Chronicles 2. So it seems like you said, it's a household franchise. But let's jump into the non-spoiler discussion part of this. Kind of see what your general thoughts are with the game. So, most of this discussion is going to be the spoiler side, but just in general, like, what were some of your thoughts with the game for someone that's maybe not played this game? What would you say about the game?
I highly recommend it, and this is coming from an era where JRPGs are starting to get really stale and lackluster, and good ones were really far in between during the PS3, 360, Wii era, particularly like 2006 to 2010 era. And JRPGs were starting to get real stale, real flat, real predictable, generic, and Final Fantasy 13 itself coming out didn't really help anything.
Yeah.
And other RPGs that were kind of disappointments with people, which were okay but not great, like Last Remnant and Infinite Discovery was just straight up bad. I was just thinking of Square Enix titles around that time in my head. But Xenoblade was like such a breath of fresh air. It felt like it was something I'm familiar with, but it felt like something new and evolved at the same time. Like, it felt like something of you would find in the 90s era of RPGs. It felt such like a I'll say it again, such like a breath of fresh air. Like, the combat system felt fresh, the story was interesting and had you hooked and engaged within the first few minutes of it. It just hits all the right notes that just kept me wanting to play it, because I was kind of like hesitant at first because I knew RPGs were so like stagnated at the time, but like just within like the first 15 minutes I'm like, oh, this is interesting, let's see where it's going. And like 50 hours later I'm like, oh wait, I'm done. I mean, everything is just great about it. The presentation, the graphics for a Wii game, the soundtrack, the battle system, it's all well thought out. And I could easily say it was the best RPG of the PS3, 360, Wii era.
Yeah, that's kind of like, you're basically kind of sounding what I want to say with the game, like at least from a non-spoiler part, is the game's just a great game, especially for the time it came out. We were getting a lot of disappointing games, and I think this is really at the time when Western RPGs really started to take over, because you had things like Mass Effect 1, I think the Elder Scrolls games were starting to get really big at that time.
Oblivion in particular, yeah.
Yeah, so, that was kind of really starting to take over, and JRPGs really weren't doing very well. I mean, Final Fantasy 13 came out, that was really disappointing. So a lot of people, I think, were starting to put JRPGs as this thing of the past, and, this game, I think, came out and at the right time when there was nothing else out there that was really of, higher quality. And for that reason, this game, I think, was very special to a lot of people. In particular, I thought the FMV, or the story sequences, were really well built. It had great dialogue. The world itself was extremely imaginative. I never felt like a new area seemed like a past area. Like, each new area felt like it was brand new. The soundtrack was just off the charts amazing, I thought. So all in all, this game was just, it's one of my favorite RPGs easily. I found it extremely enjoyable, but the only negatives I can really say is that, to me, at times the game felt long to be long, and some of the combat systems, or some of the systems in the game, even though it explains it to you, I felt like I had some issues understanding it fully. Like, I didn't really understand the battle system, I didn't think, until like 30-ish hours in. Like, I thought I understood it, but then like I realized that I didn't, and I had to like research it. And there were some massive difficulty spikes in the game that you kind of have to deal with. But other than that, like, the game, like, the pros far exceed the cons for me. So I found it extremely, extremely enjoyable.
Yeah, I agree with you. The dungeons are just, sometimes the dungeons are just so ridiculously drawn out. It's like you feel fatigued from it. But like everything just like kicks right back up, and when you get out of the dungeon, you feel so relieved.
Yeah, you're like, oh, thank God. And then it's like a 10-minute cutscene. It's like, okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah. The ones I think of particularly are like the mines and the I forgot. It was like the transition to the other area.
Yeah, well, yeah, so, yeah, I know what you mean. So from Bionis to Mechanis in particular,
Yeah.
That whole period was very, very drawn out. But I don't know. So I mean, I think if they were like, if I had one piece of like thing, like I would like if they were gonna like remake this game, which I know they wouldn't, but I would be like, okay, let's like kind of like shorten some of the dungeons and kind of like I could see what he was trying to do, Takahashi, by making the game more balanced in terms of gameplay and story. But I don't know. I tend, my personal preference, and a lot of people differ than me, is I tend to like maybe like 65-70% story, 30% gameplay. Well, that's my own personal style. So, you know, I guess it just depends on your preference. Because I know a lot of people really enjoy just running around the dungeons, collecting every item, you know, just doing the max possible side quests and everything like that. So, I guess it just depends on your play style.
Yeah, and I guess I'll say also the side quests of the game were the really good ones were far in between. A lot of them were like fetch quests, like to help you get more EXP to like alleviate the grinding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well,
the characters have, but it still wasn't very inspired. A lot of the side quests.
Yeah,
the main story is where it was at.
Yeah, most of the time the side quests were, with a few exceptions, most of the side quests were basically, hey, go kill 5 of this enemy, or go get this item, or something along those lines. However, I didn't find it as big of a deal as a lot of people have cited, because the game wouldn't require you to return to the quest giver. You know, so if it said, hey, go kill 5 of these enemies, if you killed 5 of those enemies, it would just give you like whatever the reward was. Most of the time, I didn't have to return to the individual and be like, hey, I killed 5 of them. So for that reason, like, I didn't really mind it. I would just go to a new area. I would accept all quests that I could find, and then I would just continue on with the story. And like, if I happen to, you know, complete quests, then like, great. But I don't know. I really enjoyed the fact that I didn't have to do that. So to me, that kind of alleviated some of the frustration with that. But yeah, there's a lot of other games that, especially even in 2010, that had side quests that were much more inspired, for sure. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I feel really inclined to get in the spoiler discussion here. So is there anything else you want to say for non-spoiler?
Go get the game. It's available on, of course, the Wii itself.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it digitally on the Wii U, or you can buy the 3DS version. Now, do note that the 3DS version does require you to use the new 3DS or the new 2DS due to the processing only being able to work on those 2 games. If you try to run the game on a normal 3DS or a normal 3DS XL, it will not take it.
All right. So moving on, though, I think it's time to jump into our spoiler discussion. So if that's not obvious already, if you have not played this game, you don't want everything about this game to be spoiled, I would wait. I would go pick up the game. You can play it, like Eric said, on the Wii or the 3DS.
And the Wii U Virtual Console.
And the Wii U Virtual Console. Did they update that for HD televisions on the Wii U? Do you know?
I mean, it's upscaled on a HDMI device, and it's like 480p on a 1080p device. Gotcha.
So you have that option. Go play the game, check it out, and then come back and watch the rest of this episode. But we're going to jump into the spoiler discussion here. Before we jump into the story and everything like that, I figured we could jump into the gameplay first. So in particular with the battle system, I had some issues with the battle system, but I have some positives with the battle system as well. What did you have any thoughts with the battle system that you wanted to bring up?
I thought it was pretty great, but it's not without its flaws. I really like the fact that they created a pretty imaginative system that doesn't require like item management in the game. It's like, as long as you have a good team dynamic, like, of course everyone wants like Shulk in their party usually, but like, you want like other characters that can do certain things for you. Like, you want Ryan or Dunban, depending on the situation. Like, Ryan is really good at taking a hit, and Dunban is really good at evasion. tanking. So you kind of bring in who's ever better for that particular boss fight or area. Like if the boss like has really high accuracy and like Dunban's not ideal, you want to bring Ryan in. Same thing for like Charla and I forgot the other character who has healing capable. Yeah. Her. Yeah. And you kind of just switch out. Like, I guess that's more on the preference side. Like, Charlotte was like more of a straight out healer, and I think she was like more of a like subtle region type healer with other magic capabilities.
She had a lot of Melia had a lot of like buffs and debuffs. She did have some carrying abilities as well, but my typical party lineup was Shulk, Ryan, and then Charla. Later, I traded out Ryan for Fiora because she was awesome when I got her into the party.
Oh yeah, Fiora is like if you get her set up right, like she's a good end game contender.
Yeah, she was just because I kind of had to I was kind of frustrated with the game at first with the battle system because it rewards you for the party dynamic. So using certain particular characters, you get I think like affinity from just battling together, and that helps you with like gem creation and all these different things. But I felt so inclined to use Charla for a lot of the game because she had most of the cure or healing abilities. So like I would try other party configurations and some of them would work, but none of them seemed to work as well as when Charla was in the party, because I had her set up to just cure. So I had her in there. I tried using Dunban for most of the time, but I mean, I kept going back to Ryan because he had just naturally would have so much HP. And I could just have, he would just be a tank and just everyone would just focus on him. And I'd have Charla healing him. And then, Shulk would just do what he does. And that was my best party lineup. Some of the other characters like Ricky, although that character kind of made me laugh a lot, I pretty much did not find him useful, although I read online that a lot of people said he was one of the most useful characters. So I realized I might need to spend some more time with that character, but Melia, I didn't really use too much, but go ahead.
Yeah, Ricky is good if you invest in him a little bit. Now, I was kind of the opposite. I use Dunban a lot for my tanking because, I just gemmed the hell out of him with evasion.
So that everyone just kept missing?
And aggro gems that, like, enemies were always on him, and he just never gets hit. There's just some fights where I just needed to have Ryan and not him because the boss's just like accuracy is just like ridiculous. Yeah. But that was I made like a borderline OP tank out of him, and healer wise, it depended on if I needed one at the immediate moment. A lot of times enemies go down so quick if you have enough manpower that about the time you would need healing, it's not necessary, and Dunban does a pretty good job aggroing the enemies. So a lot of times I'll bring like Fiora in or bring her in and just have her be like a straight out DPS, and we just annihilate everything quickly and just keep like trekking on through. But boss fights I definitely had to swap out for a healer. No exception there for me.
Yeah, for and this is the thing, like the first half of the game, like in terms of the battle system and the gameplay, was a lot different than my second half of the game. Because the first half of the game, I did not understand the battle system as well as I thought. And so I didn't realize how intertwined everything was either. So even like gem creation, I felt like, oh, this is like an extra thing. I'm just trying to get through this game. So I wouldn't really do gem creation. So, my characters would have their bare bones stats. And, so the first half of the game, like I was like very, very restricted about what I would do. And we'd get to boss fights. And I would have to do these bosses like sometimes like 9 or 10 times, trying different party configurations. And I would get really frustrated because my level would be 2 or 3 levels above the enemies before the boss fight. But then I still couldn't get through the boss fight. But once I figured out the game and the combat, and I actually started to focus on the gear and, like you said, gems boosting the aggro and boosting HP and attack power. The game became a lot easier for me, and it was actually kind of rewarding because I figured out how to use these systems to my benefit. So I did like that a lot. I think the thing that confused me the most about the combat, though, was well, first off, I did really like about the combat was that there was no random encounters. I'm always a big fan of that. The battle system kind of reminds me of Final Fantasy 12 a little bit. So I think for that reason is probably why I got confused, because I did not realize that your position on the battlefield would affect things greatly. So like, for example, Shulk would have certain moves that you would have to attack from behind the enemy, and it would do way more damage, or it would inflict like slow, for example, a status effect. I did not realize that you actually had to go behind the enemy. I thought like the little description under the move, I didn't realize those were directions. I thought that was just some like generic like metaphor for what I'm supposed to imagine is actually occurring. Like, oh, this move is going to attack the enemy from the behind. Like, I didn't realize I actually had to go behind the enemy and attack them. Maybe I missed that in the tutorial. So I would just like let my character just kind of sit there, and like I would like just use these moves, and I was very confused why, sometimes it would do 12,000 damage or something crazy. Then other times it would do like 1,200. But once I figured that out, I was actually like, wow, this is my party is actually a little bit over leveled, because enemies started going down quickly. So I don't know. That's, for me, it was like a dramatically different experience.
I think a few drawbacks for me were when you mentioned the gem system. I think it would have been better if they just scattered them about the game, like you like see them at campsites or any major areas. The thing is, like, the gem creation or machine was at Colony 9. You had to keep warping back to. So the problem is, like, it's not reminding you about it. It's like later in the game you're like, oh my, like, I forgot I have all these gems to work with, and it's usually after you realize that you're in trouble or things are getting harder, and you go back and do that. If the gem like creation machine was like every like major point or campsite, I think people would have been more compelled to use it. The other thing mentioned, shoot, I lost my track of mind on that.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, because like I know what you're talking about, and that like I totally forgot about it. Like, I kind of only briefly remembered that there was some guy in Colony 9 like, hey, bring your gems here and we'll craft some gems or whatever. So the only reason I remembered about it was A, I looked online, but B, also I noticed in the menu or in my inventory there's a lot of these gems, and I kind of put the pieces together like, oh yeah, like I can equip some of these, I can probably create them. But I ended up spending like 6 or 7 hours on a side quest to rebuild Colony 6, because if you do the first part of that, you get this item that's called a mini reactor, which will allow you to craft gems everywhere. And I did not know about that item until like 3/4 of the way through the game, and that item was immensely life-saving for me, because I could then all of a sudden be in a dungeon and craft new gems and like experiment, and I would save before I would craft them, and then craft a new gem, and then like if it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, I would like load my old save back up. So that item is absolutely necessary, the mini reactor, to allow you to not have to go back to Colony 9. But the problem is, it would take you like when I say 6 hours, I think I'm being forgiving. Like, I think it literally took me 10 hours of just like doing this side quest, which consisted of me just finding items on a checklist. And the only way I'd be able to get these items were to either go to the original map you could find the item and just run around hoping for the item to randomly generate, or sometimes certain NPCs would have them if you traded items for it. but sometimes they wouldn't. I never really figured it out. I think it was based on your affinity, and if your party members didn't have the correct affinity, you would have to go out and grind with other party members to get the affinity, to get the item. And this is the type of stuff where I'm like, dude, this item is so necessary. I felt like for me that like the fact that you're making me do 10 hours of crap to get this item so I can get through this boss drove me nuts.
Yeah.
But some people really like that stuff, so I can't say it's a complete criticism, but
Yeah, for the people like the crafting side of things in games, which I usually don't care for. I kind of just like to straight out find my thing or get it from a side quest or find it in a dungeon. But then there's the other side of people who like the creativity and the innovation of it.
Well, assigning gems to the equipment is very similar to the materia system in Final Fantasy VII, right? And I really liked that system in that you could just buy the materia and then you would just level it up as you used it. But I mean, I guess if people really like the gem creation system, and different party members will yield different results, so it gives some variety there. But
the problem I have with, I mean, this goes right into Xenoblade X, and Xenoblade 2, is that they have pretty cumbersome tutorials, and I don't believe they explain things very well. And in Xenoblade 2's particular case, they throw so many tutorial windows at you that you're like in chapter 7 out of 10 in that game.
Yeah. And
they're still throwing tutorials at you about things.
Yeah, it's
about
overwhelming.
Like systems within systems within systems, and it drives you nuts. And Xenoblade 1 isn't as bad on that, but I don't believe the tutorials do a great job explaining things, especially when it comes up at, like, I've noticed that tutorials come up a lot, like, especially at the beginning, after, like, dire situations are happening or, like, intense moments. Mm-hmm. And, like, people feel more compelled to just go past it and get straight into the fight with it. It's distracting when that happens.
Yeah.
Like, when the, we're in spoiler territory now, so I'm going to say it. When the Mechanus, or Shulk believes the Mechanus killed Fiona, and he goes into his whole rage mode. Like, right when you go into that, then it's like, you go to the boss, it's like, boom, tutorial. I'm like, oh, bad timing.
Dude, I was going to bring that up. I'm glad you brought that up, and I totally forgot about it, but like, I do think the tutorials were not like presented, like you said, at an opportune time, because they did that so often where they'd be like, here's a new feature for the battle system. Try it out in this boss battle. And I'm like, so like, the boss battle is more difficult than an average battle. So like, I'm just getting like decimated, retrying the boss until like I can figure out this new gameplay feature. Or like you said, it would be like right before a pivotal story sequence. So you're just like not even remotely concerned about this 5 pages of text you just read.
Yeah, I say what they should have done. I understand that Shulk just awakened the power of the Monado. Mm-hmm. And you do need to be taught how to use the Monado's power to weaken the Mechanus. But I think they should have just made it so where the Mechanus is easy enough to engage, and you can take a few moments, or like just take a moment to look at what your bar is, and or just have the fight just easy enough that the Monado is just taking it down. Then afterwards, you can put the tutorial in, and just say, hey, this is other stuff you can do with the Monado, and then just go out like that.
And like, have you try it maybe with like a enemy that won't murder you in like 4 hits if you do it incorrectly?
Or more to say, just you have your calm down moment after you win a fight. And when you're more calm and you're more patient, and like, then bring a tutorial that says, hey, you can do this, this, and this with it. And like, people are more willing to pay attention to that.
Yeah. Well, and I think also I would have liked a system that was a little more interactive, and that like it would like say, hey, do this. Like, for example, with sensing the future, like it dropped that new gameplay element like right before a boss battle. And like, I would have to go over to Ryan and like make sure that like he knew he was about to die, and he would try to like adjust to compensate for that. But I didn't really understand it at first. And so I was just not winning that boss battle. And I think it would have been better also if they just had something that said, okay, now warn Ryan. And if you don't warn Ryan, then it starts over. And it's like, okay, no, really, go warn Ryan. And then once you figure that out, it lets you go on to the next step. Okay, now he's been warned. How are you going to compensate for it? Like, so actually like teach me it, but instead it would just, show me a couple of pictures and then like I wouldn't get to see it again. Well, the whole time I'm in this battle with this boss, I can't review it. And so I'm stuck like just waiting for it to kill me so I can go into the menu and read the tutorial again. So, I mean, it wasn't the worst thing in the world because once you like got all the elements of the battle system, it wasn't as much of an issue. But I do remember it being an issue for me at the beginning, towards the first half of the game. So,
and the thing is, Xenoblade 2 just like abuses the hell out of this, and it's even worse. It's like you get tutorials just like left and right for everything, and every time you're about to start something, it's like stop. It's like, oh, come on.
Yeah,
it's like, let me just play the damn game.
Yeah, I sometimes wonder with games like that if they're trying to keep variety with the game, like, oh, you get bored with the battle system, let's keep changing it up. But I do think it causes more frustration than anything because, you want to feel rewarded. Like, yeah, I learned the system and I got really good at it. But so I like other things with the battle system that like, and I feel like I'm kind of like going to give a few negative points about it, but overall I enjoyed it more than I disliked it. But I was trying to think of things like that frustrated me. And one other thing I didn't like was that in order to revive a character, you had to utilize your bar from your chain attack meter, and there was no way for you to like buy an item to revive characters. So I found it really frustrating that my chain meter would be completely full, so I could finally do chain attacks, which were very powerful and sometimes necessary for a boss. But after utilizing the chain attack, the chain meter would be 0, and then suddenly I could not revive a character. I didn't like that. It kind of reminded me of Final Fantasy XII's like special like limit break, and that you could do a limit break, and sometimes it would be really useful, but it would also drain like all your MP, and then you'd be screwed. So a lot of times I'd be in the position where I'd be like, well, I don't think this chain attack is going to kill this boss, so I'm just not going to do that, and I'm just going to keep my meter full so that I can revive characters if they die. Because once somebody dies, if you can't revive them, like you're pretty much screwed. So
I agree with you in the fact that I like the concept of it, that you can use a limit break and get really far ahead, but at the same time you're risking your party members getting wiped out. The thing that I didn't care that they did, however, was that some fights in the game require you to use that limit break.
Yeah.
And that just makes things a whole lot harder when they're killing your party members, and it feels like the battle is dragging on forever just because you have to keep using it to revive your party members, and like it's taking forever to get that bar to where it needs to go. That part I didn't care for. It shouldn't have, I mean, it isn't required in every battle. Only just a very small select few battles require it. But it was just, it was just a chore to get it in the right position.
Yeah, so I mean, most of the time I didn't use the chain attacks if it was a boss battle because I didn't want to like risk a game over just to like get some extra damage, because I wanted my characters to be able to revive each other. But and I think that like leads me to my only other like real criticism with the game. I guess technically two, but I hate when games utilize like when the main character dies, like it's game over, but when other characters die, it's not game over. I hate when games do that, and this game does that. Now it does let other characters revive you if you have enough in your chain attack, but that type of thing really annoys me because I feel like if I can play as those other characters, why wouldn't you just let me switch that other character, let me try to build the chain attack gauge back up, and then revive Shulk? So that really annoyed me. But I mean, over the course of nearly 100 hours, I kind of got used to it. But yeah, that really frustrated me because a lot of times I would like want to give special gems to like other characters in the party because I felt like it would benefit them more so. But I would end up sticking it on Shulk because if Shulk dies, it's game over. You know?
Yeah. Another thing I did love about the combat system and not like at the same time was the variety of abilities that each character has. Like, you can really customize them the way you want them to play. The downside to it I didn't care for was that you had to keep leveling up those abilities. I wish that was just completely taken out of the game and characters just like the abilities progress with the character's level, and you can just switch around abilities to for the fight. But I felt more compelled to keep characters to their stagnant abilities because I already leveled these up. If I put this other ability in that could hypothetically work or be better, like, there's no much point to it because I didn't take time to level it up. So now I got to go out, grind, level, get some points, level the ability so I can use it in battle. And it goes to my main complaint of the Xenoblade series in general, is that they keep putting systems within systems within systems. Xenoblade 1 wasn't so bad with it, but Xenoblade X and 2 just abused it so badly. It's like they had like they felt like they didn't have confidence that they could make strategic value out of simplicity, so they tried to make something complex without adding much depth to it. And I mean, it's still simple enough in 1 because it's straightforward, it's still easy to understand. Yeah, it's just a lot it makes you deal with. But X and 2 were just like just complicated to the point that it was just not like complicated, but like complicated in the sense that like I keep forgetting to manage one thing because there's so many other things to deal with. And I really don't like it when games do that. I really sometimes just want a simple user interface. Like they do like the stats and everything just level alongside your main level, so I can stay focused and the pace doesn't break or anything like that. But then some RPGs are like, hey, let's put these systems within these systems so we can try to make people believe that our combat system isn't generic. And
well, I know exactly what you mean because you know, you're getting really involved in the story. You just want to continue the story, but then you end up having to spend, 5 hours running around trying to level up these abilities to level up, something else or build affinity between characters. And it just, it kind of dampens the story and the pacing a little bit when you have to take these giant breaks to go do all this side stuff. It's very interesting. It's well done, but I mean, I think they could have scaled it back a little bit for sure. So
yeah. Like I said, to Xenoblade 1's credit, it's still a simple system to work with. It's something that it just got worse as the series moved forward.
Yeah. For sure. And I think the only other piece of criticism I'd give is just with the battle system itself is, although it didn't have random encounters, man, some parts of this game were just so ridiculous. I almost wanted to take screenshots because it was so ridiculous how many enemies they would put in a very narrow path. And I'm like, why don't you just make it random encounters? Because you're forcing me to fight these people. At one point there was 9 mechons in a very small hallway, all in a row, and then 10 feet behind that there was 9 more mechons. I'm like, why are you doing this to me? This is agonizing. So to me, I thought that was a little ridiculous, and I felt like they were kind of just trying to pad the game clock out a little bit when it didn't have to be like that. But so I just thought I'd point that out. Let's see here. So did you have anything else you wanted to say about the battle system?
No, like I said, it's a great system. It's a simple system, but it's flawed in areas, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. In terms of gameplay, I think we kind of pretty much covered that too. But I mean, I thought the skill progression system was great, although intricate. The Collectopedia, I really actually I thought that was kind of dumb, but I ended up enjoying that where you would try to collect these glowing orb things, and they'd be items that you could then put in your collectopedia. And if you completed a collectopedia for an entire area of the map, it would all of a sudden it would be like it would give you a new brand new item, which was usually pretty good. So I thought that was a nice way to kind of change it up. I did think I did have a problem with inventory management, which is a problem with many RPGs. But it was extremely burdensome to buy an item, then go exit out of the shop, try to locate it, unequip the old item, equip the new item, then open the shop back up, find the item I unequipped, and then try to sell it. And then a lot of times comparing inventory in the shop menu, it would factor in like if like you're currently having a gem on your armor that's boosting a certain stat, it would compare your current armor with the gem's bonus attached onto it. So you could never have accurate comparisons unless you went in to your inventory, unequipped the gem, and then went back in to do the comparison. So generally, anytime I stopped at a shop, it would be like a half-hour ordeal.
Yeah, I do remember that stuff vaguely. I don't know. I play MMO, so I'm so used to like.
Yeah, you're just like, oh man, another day.
I'm used to, or I'm playing collectathon games in general, so yeah. It's nothing new to me. It's kind of like a checklist thing in my head, mm-hmm. which can be fine or not fine depending on the execution. I think Xenoblade did well enough job in its execution, but like I kind of prefer like the simple. The simple side questing and everything, like I don't really usually care for when they throw those collectathon things at me in the RPG.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I feel like that's kind of in patting in its own way.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of usually just prefer like deep, meaningful side quests, even if they're like just very few. You know, kind of like Chrono Trigger.
Well, and what those things do is, just like in Chrono Trigger, is they kind of break up the monotony, and that's something I've kind of felt with this game too. And I feel like I'm like crashing the game, but I love this game. But a lot of classic RPGs, they break up the monotony somehow. Like Final Fantasy VII would have like Fort Condor, and you had to do that whole thing, or they'd have like the whole cross-stashing sequence, or chocobo breeding, or like all these different things that you could do to kind of like break up like the fact that you're just going from point A to point B. And you know, this game didn't really have much of that aside from, fetch questing. But I say that only casually because that brings us to, like, I think the next part is just graphically, like the art design and the music were just so enjoyable to me that, like, I kind of, like, covered up the fact that, like, there wasn't really much else to do except collect items and run from point A to point B. You know?
Oh, man. The character design, or like the art design this game,
mm-hmm.
top notch.
Yeah,
it's absolutely gorgeous, which makes me more baffled that they went to that art style with Xenoblade 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh man, they're like, why can't you get the people who did the first game to do the second one? Like, I know you got to appeal to your otaku culture, but come on, you got to throw a bone on that one.
Yeah,
and. I mean, the art design of Xenoblade 1 is just so great. I mean, that's what immediately attracted me to the game, is just how well designed these characters looked.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even, first off, the character, like you said, the character design was phenomenal. But what impressed me the most, I think, was just the art design for the various locations. They were so unique. Like, you would have, like, pathways that like go like up into the sky. You'd have sky cities and like other areas where you have like light ethers just like illuminating from the ground. And at one point you're inside like the Bionis' like body, and like you're trying to like battle like cells and stuff, I think. So it's like it's very, very imaginative, and like there you can tell a lot of attention to detail was put into the design, the art direction of this game. And it was just top notch. And like I think the only drawback is it came out on the Wii. You know?
I mean, it's so phenomenal looking. Like the areas are just so like you said, it's the attention to detail. They're gorgeous. The soundtrack that, like the music that goes with the areas, is just it's just so, it keeps you so engaged with everything. If like it really feels like you're going through an adventure, and like I know you said earlier, it's like each area looks varied and different from the other.
Yeah,
and like it doesn't feel like I'm just going through like just like some themed area. It's like, no, it's like these are just like areas like I never, like something you would see like out of Final Fantasy or something. So some crazy beautiful looking area. And like one of the areas I like in particular is I forgot the name of the city, but it's the big city where all the elves live.
Oh, the Hyantia?
Yeah,
the
and like
bird
the
people?
beach.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the bird people. But you going through the beach and you just see that gorgeous city just from the back.
Yeah.
And like
Exactly.
It's just so well designed, so well thought of. Like whoever did the art direction for that game, like just like deserves every award and praise that he's gotten.
Yeah, and I think what added to that was just I was extremely impressed that this game came out on the Wii, because like a lot of times, like I would think like at the beginning of the game, like, oh, this is so beautiful. This must be like some kind of like pre-rendered deal, like that's making it look this nice. And then like I would like fall off a ledge or something, and I'd be like, nope, it's fully explorable. Like, you know, you could just like these map sizes were just gigantic, and they were so beautiful, but you could still like run around in it and engage in it. And I think a lot of times, like, I think this probably put some open world games to shame, because it was just so creative in its presentation, you know?
Yeah, this is the type of structure in RPG I like, is that it's a linear game to be sure, but it's open enough that you feel the need to explore what's around you, giving that linear path. Like you can like go off to the side and find like hidden treasure or like powerful notorious monsters you can find to fight in battle and get good treasure from him, or do side quests. It's like you didn't feel like you had to go straight through the path. Like you could if you want to, but you had room to wiggle around and explore and take your time through it, take the area in, enjoy it the most you can.
Yeah.
And then progress to the next area. It's what I wish that games like FF13 and 15 would have been like, but you know, that's we've already discussed about those two games, but
yeah, exactly.
But like Xenoblade, I think just hit the right thing, and like that and Final Fantasy 12, I think hit the right notes on how to do a linear-esque open world.
Well, it's open enough to like make you feel like it's an actual place, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, and I think that's important. So, but yeah, man, like I really, I can't say it enough. Like I really enjoyed running around in this world. I'm now it's beaten. I'm gonna kind of miss running around in it, because it was just like you never knew what was around the corner. It was just gonna be some new like crazy thing you would only see in like an Avatar movie or something.
Yeah, you're like you're like level 15. You just turn around the corner and there's a level 90 monster that just one shots you. Oh
yeah, I totally forgot about that. And yeah,
that's a thing.
Yeah, that's that game. This game does that a lot, where I'm just like, what the hell? But at least it's pretty forgiving with game over. So, but yeah, I really liked it. The art design a lot, and like we said, the music was fantastic. For some reason, I was under the impression that Yasunori Mitsuda, the composer of Chrono Trigger, I thought he did the entire soundtrack, but I looked it up and he only did one song. He did the final song, but it was actually 6 composers that worked on this. One of the main ones was Yoko Shimomura, and I think she kind of managed some of the other composers, or at least kind of took a leading role. So I was very impressed, because I kind of know her from Kingdom Hearts, which I like some of the songs there, but like this was a totally like, I feel like some of the tracks she did, like she really stepped up her game. I know there was other people that did tracks as well, some of the biggest ones, but I was really impressed with overall the quality of the music. It felt very cohesive, even though it was 6 different people making songs. It all felt like it was one composer, and it all benefited the world and created a sense of adventure. So, awesome
the
job.
Soundtrack was absolutely fantastic. It felt consistent despite having 6 composers working on it.
Yeah,
it like the event scenes, like the music that was in the back, and like with Shulk singing Fiona died from the Mechanis, and just like the scream and rage he has, and the music, the event music going with it. Yeah. It's like that's like a near perfect scene right there. Yeah. It's like you are so engaged, you are so ready to take on, and the battle music that's just with it. Like, I've listened to these songs various times. Like, I mean, they're so intense, they get you so engaged, and it's just so it's just so fun. The battle theme is great. The boss battle themes are really good. I liked it when you went to Mechanis, that the battle theme changed, and it sounded more mechanical.
Yeah,
the music, or like the music in general on Mechanis, feels very mechanical, which made you feel like you were in a very different world than from Bionis. I mean, they just nailed that. Yeah. And just the daytime and the nighttime themes to everything. Also, the nighttime made you feel like a lot calmer, and the daytime felt like you're more adventurous and you're ready to go out and have that adventure. Yeah,
I mean, basically, like it. I can't praise this enough. It's just like whatever is like I should be feeling as a player at that point in time. This game just like knocked it out of the park in terms of music. Like you said, if you're running around like a giant open field and there's these like creatures flying around, and it's like this magical place, the music would reflect that. Or if it's a very emotional scene, like they would swoop in with these like violins, and it would just be like just killing it. So like this game, like the soundtrack just like really supported this game for me. So I mean, it's just freaking phenomenal. I think it's one of the best soundtracks I've heard. So really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean I give that definitely 2 thumbs up on that. Now, speaking of audio, we have we've not addressed a certain thing yet, and that is the voice acting of the game. And
how'd you feel about the voice acting?
I think it's good. Yeah. It felt a little jarring at first because it is a very British European accent voices, which makes sense because Europe localized the game. So naturally they're going to have British speaking actors for it. And it took a few minutes to get to, but eventually it started warming up to me, and it had a level of charm to it. Like, we all love hearing Ryan with his lines like, "It's Ryan time," or "What a bunch of jokers."
Yeah.
I mean, you start to fall in love with it.
It's a bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. And it did make it feel unique. Like, it didn't feel like your normal JRPG voice actors that you always hear and everywhere. It did feel like a breath of fresh air in that regard. Some things may have sounded a little over the top.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
But I think it did very well in its execution of it. It just warmed up to me.
Yeah, I think for the most part, and I would say overwhelmingly like 90% of the game, the voice acting is spot on. In particular, I really like recording audio. So I kept wondering like what kind of mics they used, because like even like the recording quality, it was very warm, and like it felt really nice and pleasant to the ears the way it was recorded. The voice acting was like no one was like, very few people were very anime-ish. It was very realistic, and like it felt convincing. I really liked the voice acting of this game. However, like you said, there was a few parts that were a little over the top. Usually it would be with like some of the minor villains. In particular, I kind of wrote down when I thought that some of them were like very over the top. One of them was the first big mechon that you have to battle. I think his name's called Zord.
Tonight, the main course will be you. And if I've still got room, the brat will make a tasty dessert.
This guy was so anime-ish, over the top. It did not fit this game at all. Like, he was just like, I'm gonna eat you, and it was just like, what are you doing, dude? Like, stop talking like that. it was so. I was so glad when that guy died.
No. He was still a little intimidating though.
Oh yeah, he was very intimidating, but
because he felt powerless to beat him at first.
Yeah. And then the only other one that was really bad for me was Mumkar, who was the Hom that like kind of looked like that guy from the Smurfs that eats the Smurfs. But he betrayed the Homs, and like he was wanted to kill Dunban and be the hero or whatever. Guy was a little over the top with his like voice. It was very, very cartoony to me. But other than that, everything else was very well done. But those two were like really just out of place for me. So, but everything else was phenomenal.
Thumbs up for the voice actors.
Yeah. Do you want to move into the story?
Yeah, we can talk about like pivotal story bits.
Yeah, we're not going to cover every plot point, but just in general. In general, I thought the story was phenomenal. What did you think about the story?
Oh, the story is engaging from the start to the very end. It's like all these twists and turns and crazy things are happening, especially near the end of the game where things start really getting in your face. Like finding out that Bionis was actually the bad one and Mechonis was actually the good one, and Mechonis was just going in full self-defense mode. Now, granted, Mechonis started going like the leader of the Mechonis, like just started going like crazy and just taking it out on everyone and not just like Zanza or something like that. But like, then he did need to be stopped to an extent also. But it's so crazy that like what you've been fighting for the entire game is like pretty much the cause of everything.
Yeah, like I think that's the biggest thing that you're bringing up here is that like I think I enjoyed the macro levels, like the storytelling a lot more than like the micro storytelling, because like everything, like the big events going on, I was really into it. I was really into like what was going on with the High Entia. I was really into the Bionis and the Mechonis, and you had Eagle, I think you pronounce it that way. It's the big Mechon villain guy that ended up not being the real end game boss. Surprise, surprise. And you had Sansa and Mayneth and what was going on with Fiora and like all that stuff. I thought was just like very, very convincing. And
I'm actually glad to get Fiora back. I didn't know she would be a party member again. I thought she just straight out died.
Well, yeah, and those things, some of the plot twists in this game, I did not see coming at all. I thought she was dead, like you said.
Yeah, but you know, when we found out that the metal face was actually the third guy from the beginning of the game, I was starting to think to myself, that's when I started thinking to myself, could Fiona still be alive? Like if he got taken away and turned into a Mechonis, like it's possible she may have also, and lo and behold, there she was.
Yeah, I did not. Well, and that's the thing. I did not expect, because I thought in the cutscene, like I thought she clearly died. You know, because I felt like I saw Zord or whatever like take these like giant like claws and it like went right over her body, and I was like, okay, like she's clearly dead.
Well, in a sense, she did die. That's why she's so dependable on the Mechonis technology that's on her. She can't take it off.
Yeah, and that's the thing. They saved her life basically, but she's basically a hybrid machine now. So part of her is dead, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah, like physically, her body is like dead, but like her brain is still
active, and she still has all the memories. Yeah, and that's the thing I found very interesting about this game is certain characters I thought were like main party members were much more developed than other characters. So I thought like Fiora in general, her whole character arc, I thought was great. I mean, she was this very innocent person at the beginning of the game. I mean, she was still, had a fighting spirit, but she died, or at least we thought. And then, the whole time she's in the Mechon, she's trying to convince who we later found out was Mayneth controlling her. She's trying to convince her to, save Shulk. And then she has to deal with the fact that like she's now a machine. and all these different things are going on. And I thought her character arc was great. I thought Dunban's character arc was great. But like some of the character arcs in this game, like they kind of like, even though the Takahashi says everything he wanted is in the game, I still felt like certain characters were like underutilized. Like for example, if you compare Ryan's character arc, right? Who basically Ryan's whole character arc is that he's Shulk's friend, and you better not say anything bad about Shulk. And that's basically Ryan. Every now and again,
he did get a little hots for Charla.
Yeah, like every now and again you'd see a little scene with Charla, but that's about the extent of Ryan. And I'm like comparing it to like, let's say Wakka's character arc in Final Fantasy X. Well, I feel like they kind of have similar like roles in the story. And I'm like, well, Wakka went through this whole like racism thing he was trying to deal with, and then he eventually lost his faith in his religion. Like, I was like, I kind of like missed that like deep freaking dive into like all these characters that I'd want. But I mean, so like for that reason, like I kind of felt like certain characters were underutilized. Another example was Malia. I thought she was going to be a great character. She was the High Entia, the princess of the High Entia. And they spent all this time developing that. She became like the queen or whatever. And then it had like one of the worst scenes I had ever seen that was so not in line with the rest of the great scenes in this game. Right after her father dies and she becomes the queen or whatever of the High Entia, she's like, okay, Shulk, I can't travel with you. I have to lead my people. And then Charla's like, hey, I know you like Shulk, and he's going to forget about you if you don't stay in the party. So if you like him, you should probably keep going.
Why are you still here?
Listen, I'll keep an eye on Shulk for you.
Whatever can you mean?
Well, it's a risky strategy, letting Shulk go off and just hoping he'll come back to you.
Shulk and I are merely...
Yeah. But remember, the longer he's away, the more chance his feelings for you will fade. But once we find this Fiora, I will personally whisk him back here in a heartbeat. Don't give up.
I appreciate it.
Great. Don't worry, Melia. I'm on your side.
Brother?
Just on your way out, I see.
It's not what...
I'm sorry, Your Highness. About your offer. We must humbly decline. I see. Very well. Let us hope my sister does not shed too many tears.
I stay because I must, brother.
There's 2 Melias.
Right wrong. This Melly smell different.
Yes. We need Melia to learn more of the lands of Bionis, but she is still bound to handle public matters. Hence, another Melia.
Callian.
Your Highness, Crown Princess, as your humble subject, I formally request the following.
Speak.
I request that you accompany Shulk in his quest to find the Mechon that attacked Alcamoth.
Are you sure?
Shulk, I am aware of everything. Go forth and follow your heart. There will come a day when we need you, but it is not today.
And she's like, oh man, I don't know what I want to do. And then her brother comes along. He's like, don't worry about it. Go with Shulk. We have a twin that looks just like you. And like this person walks out that looks just like her. They put a mask on her, and like all of a sudden, they're like, this is going to be like the fill-in queen, which I thought was ridiculous. But I was like, okay, well, Malia's going to hook up with Shulk. And then like they never really like addressed that again in any major way. Like that was like her character arc was pretty much done until like the end of the game. So like those two characters in particular, I thought like I didn't like what they did with the characters in those games. But like I said, Fiora, Dunban was great. Even Charla, I was kind of in the middle on until like she had some great scenes with Gadult, her former boyfriend or whatever. I thought that was really moving. So for me, like characters, Ryan and Melia, I really didn't like their character arcs. For me,
yeah, Ryan is more of the comedic relief. He definitely has his moments that help the story progress and move along, but he is mostly there as a support for Shulk and to relieve or like relieve the intensity of the scene a bit to calm the audience down. I think he does well in that, but for the most part, he is the same character by the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, you could they set up all these characters in such a great way where all of them are very interesting and very likable people, and to the credit of the game for doing that. But like you said, by the end of the game, he's pretty much the same dude. So I would have liked to seen a little more with him, but what are you going to do? How'd you feel about Dixon? I didn't like the plot twist with Dixon. I felt that was very.
I liked it, but after it, he became kind of became a one-note, twirly mustache villain.
Yeah.
After it, the thing with the story I like is you understand where both sides are coming from in the conflict. Ultimately, even though Bionis is technically still more in the wrong.
Yeah.
But Dixon is you want to understand where he's coming from also with it, but after he does a revelation, which I thought it was cool, I'm like, oh, this person that we've known the entire game and we thought was a good guy and supporting character, kind of a Sid-like character in a way, and he turns out being one of the main bad guys in the game. I'm like, huh, well, that is definitely something. So I was thinking that they would explore more why he's like that, but it was kind of, in the end, he was just a like I said, he was a one-note twirly mustache villain. After that, Zanza was more of a you understood the character more, what his motivations were. Dixon was just kind of just there to be evil.
Evil, yeah. Well, that's it. I actually really liked Dixon as a character for most of the game, and I thought he was very interesting. There's a lot of mystery around him, and I wanted to know more about him. And then once they had that thing where he shoots Shulk in the back, and I was like, what? And I thought for sure he was being controlled by someone. I found out, no, this whole time he has been acting, and he is really this evil bad guy. I kept wanting a scene or two where we realized that, well, he wasn't completely acting. He was attached to Shulk to some bit. He's just for some reason, I wanted some idea to his motivations. I didn't like the idea that all of a sudden, he just became, like you said, this one-note villain. So,
yeah. So, why don't you tell me what you thought about the ending to the game?
At first I was kind of like, what in the world is going on? But all in all, I really liked it. I thought it was good. I know a lot of people did not like it. And I can see why. Anytime you try to intertwine Earth with a game's world, people generally don't like it. People didn't like that in certain Final Fantasy games. People didn't like it in Star Ocean games, right? It's just, but to me, I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. I like sci-fi. I thought it was very, very interesting. I liked I like the fact that Shulk dies and then he returns as this Jesus-like figure. I thought that was really, really rewarding as a player for him to come back. And,
basically became God.
Yeah, and I thought that was just awesome. I did think it was a little. I think they could have tweaked the way. I thought it was kind of weird, how things came about. That basically. You had Zanza and Maineth in a space station orbiting Earth, and one of them presses a button and she's like, no, and the whole universe is rewritten, but only those two people are in the world. What happened to all the people in the background on the space station? But I kind of ignored that. I guess Alvis was kind of the computer And I'm assuming the Monado was kind of like an administrative key that would allow you to alter time or like space and time.
Yeah, Monado and Alphas were basically the computer program.
So I thought it was just a very, very fascinating concept to visit. The specific actual last couple minutes of the game I found really enjoyable as well. The way I look at it is Shulk was like, yeah, well, I'm not going to go with either of these options you're giving me, Alvis, to either completely destroy it or leave it to fade and basically be destroyed in of itself. I think Destiny should be thrown out the window, and whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And he's like, we don't need gods. And basically, it seems to me like the world was rebuilt, but it was rebuilt in a way in which everyone still remembers everything. It was just like, but stuff was kind of fixed, right? So like all the races live together now. Fiora is no longer required to be a machine. That's the way I read it. I saw somewhere that some people felt like, well, all the events that happened in the game, no one remembers that. These are just close friends now. I don't know. But what did you think?
I thought the ending was pretty great. It's interesting that the whole entire conflict happened of like him basically going, I'm going to press the button. He's like, don't you press that button. I'm going to press the button. Don't you press the button.
Yeah.
I'm pressing the button.
What would have happened if he did not have pressed the button? And like,
so. I guess it just still would have been Earth, I suppose. But it is interesting to see how everything was created. And I thought the ending was really good. I mean, not much more to say to that. I think everything just wrapped itself nicely in a nice little bow.
Yeah,
and
some people were really like, the one piece of criticism I saw when I was looking online is some people really felt like they really enjoyed 95% of the game, but they just did not like the ending. So I was kind of surprised by that because I thought it was really cool. I mean, yeah, I guess it's kind of JRPG-ish in that like it like puts a plot twist at the last 5 minutes of the game, but I felt like the plot twist makes sense of everything from the beginning of the game. You know, if I were to replay it now, I'd have a lot greater context of what's going on. So,
definitely,
yeah. But I don't know. That's my thoughts with the story. I mean, I'm sure we could spend a whole episode going by each plot point, but man, this game was so long. In terms of story, it was crazy. I felt like I played 3 games. I almost wouldn't mind if they made like a novelization of the story. I think I would read the book, but it was really well done.
Yeah, I agree. Very, very good story.
Yeah, and closing, I think this is unanimous, but would you recommend this game?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, me too. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I can't... I'm just glad I played it. It just sucks some of the sequels aren't as good as this first one, but
yeah, I mean, I could rant about how much I don't like Xenoblade X, and Xenoblade 2 was all right. A lot of it wasn't my cup of tea, but it definitely appealed to a lot of people. So yeah. I'd say it's a good game in that regards, but maybe just not so much for me.
Very cool. I still have not played it. I've heard a lot about it. I've seen a lot about it, but I haven't played it, so I'll have to give it a shot and give my own take. But all in all, I give this game a major thumbs up. I thought it was a great game. A lot of the criticisms I brought up about the game were very minuscule in terms of what I enjoyed about the game. And I think that's the biggest thing I want people to take away is that I enjoyed the game more than I disliked it. So,
yeah, the positives definitely outweigh the negatives by far.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that about wraps this up. If you've enjoyed this episode and you are not subscribed, I would really appreciate, and I know Eric would as well, if you hit that subscribe button. And that way you can follow us. We are a weekly RPG and gaming podcast. Every week we come out with a new episode, usually covering various news that came out about games and RPGs. But other than that, we will catch you all next week. Easy, guys.
All right. Take care, everyone.